Hey guys, I am Chris Baker from Lucky Gunner, and today we are going to talk about how to use an AR-15 or other AR pattern rifle. This is an updated version of the original video we posted back in 2017. If you are new to guns in general or just new to ARs, I'm going to show you the basics of how to safely load, unload, and fire an AR. No video can take the place of real in-person training from a qualified instructor, but this should help you get going in the right direction. Before we get into the specifics, we need to start out with a few guidelines for safety. And safe is a relative term. Anything we do with firearms is inherently dangerous. Every time you pick up a gun, you are making life and death decisions, whether or not you realize it. Now, we can reduce that risk by following the 4 basic rules of safe gun handling. There are different ways to phrase these rules, but they usually go something like this. Number 1, treat all guns the same way you would treat a loaded gun. You cannot ignore the other 3 rules just because you believe a gun is unloaded. Number 2, always keep the gun pointed in a safe direction. That means if it were to fire, it's not going to hurt anyone who doesn't need to be hurt, and it's not going to damage anything you can't afford to replace. Number 3, keep your finger away from the trigger until you are ready to shoot something. Pretty straightforward, but that's the one people seem to have the most trouble remembering. Anytime we're holding the gun, but we're not actively aiming at a target and preparing to fire, we need to have our trigger finger straight and glued to the side of the receiver. We don't just want our finger off the trigger, we want it as far away from the trigger as we can reasonably get it. Number 4, know what you are shooting at and what is behind it and around it. That goes for the shooting range or anywhere else you might need to use your gun. There's a lot more to using a gun safely than just these 4 guidelines, but if you follow them, you greatly reduce your chance of unintentionally hurting yourself or someone else. There are several different methods for doing just about everything I'm about to show you. My goal isn't to cover them all. I just want to help you grasp the absolute basics. Whenever we handle an AR-15, or any gun for that matter, the first thing we need to do is clear it. That means we're going to check and see if it's loaded, and if it is, we will unload it. The first step is to remove the magazine. The magazine release is right here on the right side of the rifle. Some rifles have an additional button on the left side, but most do not. Just push that and the magazine will drop free. Set that aside. And now you need to open the bolt to see if there is a round in the chamber. The bolt is this thing here that moves back and forth when the gun is fired. If you don't see it, it might be because this thing here, the ejection port cover, is closed. That's just to keep dirt and debris out of the inside of the gun. It will open automatically when you open the bolt. So to do that, you're going to pull sharply on the charging handle to the rear as far as it will go. On a standard AR, you pull the left side of the handle. Unless you've got a fancy ambidextrous handle, then you can pull either side of it. If there is a round in the chamber, it should come out when you do this. But you still need to get a look inside the chamber to make sure there is nothing in there. So we actually need to lock the bolt open. Now this next part is a little awkward. It's probably the most complicated manipulation that we're going to cover, and then it gets a little easier from there on. So over here on the left side of the gun, we have the bolt catch, also called the bolt release. Push in the lower portion of that and hold it down. While you're holding it down, pull back the charging handle. Now the bolt will be locked open and the charging handle will be loose, so push that back in until it locks into place. I'm going to show you another way to do that. It's actually a little less awkward to do it the left-handed way. So if you hold the grip in your left hand, you can press that bolt catch with your index finger, then you use 2 fingers to pull the charging handle. Makes it a little easier. Okay, with the bolt open, get a good look inside the chamber. That's just the technical name for the part of the barrel where the ammo goes. We want to see an empty chamber that looks like this. If there is still a round in there for some reason, it'll look like this. That round should have ejected when you open the bolt. If it didn't, your gun might be broken and you really need to just involve somebody who knows what they're doing. On the left side of the gun, right above the grip, you will find the safety selector. Again, sometimes it's on both sides of the gun, but usually just on the left. On most ARs, there will be 2 options, safe and fire, or something similar. Move the safety selector so the pointy bit is pointing to safe. if it is not already. Now that you have cleared the gun, you can do whatever else it is you need to do with it, like clean it or put it away or show it to your buddies. If I was going to store it, I would close the bolt first, but in this case, I am going to load it. So I'm going to leave the bolt locked open and put the gun down with the barrel pointed in a safe direction. Keep the ejection port facing up. That's this opening here. That lets everyone else at the range see that the rifle is unloaded. Just kind of a common courtesy. Next, we are going to load the magazine. I've got some ammo here. So brace the bottom of the magazine against a hard surface. This wedge-shaped portion of the follower will point in the same direction the bullets need to be pointing. That's a little clue. So pop the rounds over the top. They're going to sit in a staggered pattern. So one round is going to sit on the left. The next one will just automatically go on the right side. You don't really have to worry about that. It happens automatically. I suggest you not fill the magazines to full capacity. For example, I usually load just 28 rounds in a 30-round magazine, and I'll talk about why in just a minute. Once you've loaded however many rounds you want to shoot, pick up the rifle with your firing hand on the grip, keep it pointed in a safe direction, take a quick look at the safety selector, make sure it is still on safe, pick up the magazine and insert it into the mag well until it clicks, and then give it a little tug to make sure that it is firmly seated in place. If you skip this step and it's not all the way in there, your mag might fall out while you're shooting. You're going to feel silly, and that is no good. Once you have ensured the mag is fully seated, press the top portion of the bolt catch, and when I press that, it's going to close the bolt and chamber around. I'm going to slow down here and go over that again because this throws people off sometimes. When the bolt closes, it picks up a round from the magazine and loads it into the chamber. So if I take this magazine that has just one round in it and I load it, if I remove the magazine, you can see the round is gone. It's not in the magazine anymore because it is now in the chamber. So the gun will fire if I press the trigger with the safety off, even though there is no magazine, because there is a round in the chamber. The loading procedure looks a little different if the bolt is already closed before you insert the magazine. In this case, you insert the mag and make sure that it's seated. Now, it might be a little harder to get it to seat when the bolt is closed, and that's why you don't necessarily want a fully loaded mag. When the magazine spring is fully compressed, sometimes it doesn't like to go all the way in there. Now that varies a lot from one magazine to the next. Some of them are fine fully loaded, but lots of them do better with 1 or 2 rounds less than full capacity. Okay, so my mag is in there, but the gun is not ready to fire yet. There's no round in the chamber. So you just pull the charging handle to the rear and release it. You don't want to ease it forward, just let it go so the bolt can do all the work. At this point, the gun is loaded and it will fire if I disengage the safety and press the trigger, but we are not quite ready for that yet. So keep the safety on and your finger away from the trigger for now. There is one other control on the rifle that we have not talked about yet, and that is the Foward Assist. The only time you would ever use the Foward Assist is if the bolt doesn't go all the way forward for some reason. You can tap on the Foward Assist and it'll force the bolt into place. It's debatable whether this is really all that useful in reality. Sometimes hunters in the field will use it if they're trying to ease the bolt forward to quietly load their gun in a tree stand or something. Otherwise, you're probably never going to need it, but at least now you know what it's for. Let's talk about actually firing the rifle. I've cleared it for now, and I've removed all ammo from the area just to be safe, but let's pretend both me and the rifle are ready to shoot. The best stance and grip to use are going to be dependent on the type of shooting you're doing. I'm just going to give you a quick overview of a kind of general purpose technique. Don't overthink the stance too much. It's pretty straightforward. You just get into a kind of an athletic type posture with your feet shoulder width apart, your knees slightly bent. You want to lean forward at the waist. You don't want to lean back. You want your weight kind of on the balls of your feet. For the grip, put the web of your hand as high up on the grip as possible. Keep your index finger straight and up here well away from the trigger. If you're right-handed, put the thumb of your firing hand just below the safety selector. You want your elbow pointed at the ground, not out like that. Most ARs these days have an adjustable length stock. If you're about average height or taller, you probably just want to extend that all the way out as far as it'll go. Shorter people might try bringing it in 1 or 2 clicks. You kind of just have to experiment with it. So when you shoulder the rifle, you place the stock kind of on the outer edge of your pectoral muscle. You don't want it right on your shoulder, kind of inboard like that. Grab the hand guard with your support hand. I like to get my arm out, not quite to full extension, kind of here, but some people do it here. It varies. It's really not that important. Just hold it somewhere for now. With the stock on your shoulder, pivot the gun down so that it's pointed at the ground just in front of the target. This is the low ready position. It's kind of the default position that you're going to use at the firing line when you're not actually shooting. When it is time to shoot, you bring the gun up to eye level, get the stock firmly planted against your cheek like that. And as much as possible, you want to move the gun to your face, not your face to the gun. You don't want to crane your head over like that. You can kind of scrunch your shoulders or your neck if you need to. Just don't want to go to one side like that. And now I have to take a quick detour to talk about how to use sights and optics. These days, most shooters put some kind of optic on their AR, either an electronic dot sight like this or a magnified scope. Any of these options are fine. Simple red or green dot sights are the most straightforward to use, and they allow beginners to focus on the other basics of shooting. So that's what I typically recommend. With dot sights, you just look through the glass at your target, line up the dot with the center of the target, and that's all there is to it. The sight will wobble around a little bit, and that's okay. You won't be able to hold it perfectly still, especially when you're shooting from a standing position. Just try to keep the wobble as close to the center of the target as you can. A magnified scope with crosshairs works basically the same way. You line up the center of the crosshairs with the center of the target. If you don't have an optic, then hopefully your rifle is equipped with a set of iron sights. Iron sights aren't actually made of iron. That's just the term for any kind of traditional sighting system where you have a front and a rear sight that you have to line up. Iron sights on ARs are usually the aperture style, also called peep sights. The rear sight is a hole that you look through, and the front sight is a post. Iron sights on ARs originally looked like this, but today they're usually the flip-up style, like what we have here. If that's what you have, just make sure the sights are flipped up before you try to use them. Look through the hole in the rear sight at the front sight post. You will probably have to close one eye to do this. Line up everything so the top of the front sight post is right in the center of the target. Unless the target is really close, you generally want your vision focused on the front sight. Whether you are using iron sights or an optic, you might have to make some adjustments to that sighting system so that the spot you're aiming at is the same as the spot the bullets are going. This is called sighting in or zeroing the rifle. I've got a whole separate video on that topic. We're not going to cover it today. Just be aware that if you bought your gun new or you just installed the optic yourself, it will probably need to be sighted in before you can hit what you're aiming at. One more note about optics. Some rifles, like this one, have an optic and iron sights. You don't use both at the same time. When I'm using my red dot, I ignore the iron sights. That's why they fold out of the way. You never have to line up the dot with the iron sights or anything like that. The irons are just there to use as a backup in case the optic fails for some reason. Okay, so back to shooting the rifle. When the gun is pointed at the target, you can disengage the safety. Use your thumb if you're right-handed. If you're shooting left-handed, you can use the knuckle of your trigger finger. And now finally, you can move your finger to the trigger, press it to the rear with steady, even pressure, and bang. Congratulations, you have just put a hole in something. The gun will be extremely loud when it fires. Good hearing protection is absolutely essential. However, most AR-style rifles do not have a lot of recoil, so it's not going to beat up your shoulder or knock you down or anything like that. After the gun fires, in the blink of an eye, the bolt will move to the rear, a spent shell casing will fly out of the ejection port, and a new round will be loaded into the chamber. Press the trigger again to fire another round, and you can keep doing that until you run out of ammo or you decide to stop shooting. In either case, anytime you stop shooting, take your finger off the trigger, flip the safety to the safe position, and go back to the low ready. When the gun is empty, the bolt will lock open on the last shot. Remove the empty magazine and either insert a new mag or table the rifle with the muzzle in a safe direction and the ejection port up until you decide what to do next. Okay, that was a lot to cover, so let's put it all together with a quick live fire demonstration. First, clear the gun. Remove the magazine, lock the bolt open, and check the chamber. Make sure the safety is on, then put down the gun and load the magazine. Once the mag is loaded, double check that the safety is engaged, insert the magazine and press the bolt catch to close the bolt and chamber around. From the low ready position, raise the gun to eye level, aim, safety off, and press the trigger. When you stop firing, finger off trigger, safety on, and down to low ready. When the gun is empty, remove the magazine and load another one or table the rifle. Of course, there's a lot of stuff I did not cover in this video. This is just a quick overview of the basics. I hope you found it helpful. Again, I highly recommend getting some training in person from a qualified instructor. And I also suggest that when you need some ammo for your AR-15, you get it from us with lightning fast shipping at Lucky Gunner.